वेलकम टू मेन स्ट्रीम विद हरप्रीत सिंह तूर। आप सबनों प्यार भरी सत श्री अकाल, नमस्कार, आदाब एंड शलोम। We have a really hard things to discuss today. As you probably already, everybody now knows why the Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau was not properly received at G20 meeting. But before we go into that, always remember to send an email on hstour@gmail.com for your opinions, your views, and whatever you want to me to discuss here. Before I go into all this, the whole thing which exploded actually within last about, I would say, about 36 hours now. Maybe little, give or take a little bit more than that, but it's very interesting. I always talk from here two things. Okay, first is freedom of speech, freedom of expression, freedom of thoughts, and freedom of movement within your country. Number one. Number two, I'm not in favor of any kind of violence, especially in today's world where we have so much at our hand tips that we can communicate properly with any authorities, and we can talk about the issues at multiple places at multiple levels. Okay, so the reason I'm saying this thing is because whatever happened at at couple of places to the Indian consulars or the staff from Indian consulate where they were either attacked or there were issues where they were harassed. And also I think in San Francisco there was even damage to the property. I spoke against that. It is not right, and whatever is not right, it should be spoken about and talked about it. And that's the responsibility of a person, especially if you are trying to disseminate the information to the public who is going to listen to you. And then those people, some of the people, they will just trust you like that, and some of the people will dive deep into it. And at the same time, there are going to be the people who doesn't matter what you say, they will always believe the other side of the picture. I agree there are always two sides to the picture, but there are few pictures where there's no other side, and that's the thing which I'm talking about here today. I will tell you why. Harjit Singh Nijjar, when he got shot down at that time with two masked assassins, yes, I'm aware of some of the gang shootings in Canada, the drugs by the Punjabis, even though the most of that is blamed on the Sikhs, if I may say so. But there are other peoples also, and I think in one of the show I always say that even doesn't matter, a person who commits a crime doesn't have a faith. Okay, so to say, oh, Sikhs got caught doing this, Sikhs got caught doing that, or Muslims got caught doing this, Muslims got caught doing that, no, that's not appropriate. A person got caught doing that. Okay, so when he got shot, initially to me it was probably one of those, because in the Gurdwaras we always have these tensions, and I will not hesitate to say here, because in the Gurdwaras there is always a tendency by the government to interfere directly or indirectly. Okay, do I have a proof to show? No, I don't, in black and white. But if a proper deep dive is done, then there are few things which you will see that they do get attached with one thing, then to the second, then to the third, and ultimately it leads to certain sources where it originated from. So, when a Prime Minister of Canada gives a statement in the Parliament, it is not to appease Jagmeet Singh, as it is being said. It is because Canada has freedom of speech, like the Prime Minister said. Whether he likes it or he doesn't like it, the Khalistanis, those elements, they have the right to demonstrate, they have the right to, talk about their views. Same thing in the United States. These people, they have their right, even though they do not have any right to destroy or damage any property or harass anybody or threat anybody, physically or otherwise, even if it is a physical threat posture. I know there are some of the people who propagate about Khalistan and they yell at the full lungs, they talk about it, but that is also not appropriate. But also at the same time, if they are doing it that way, maybe they are doing it because that's how they get their bread and butter. Maybe, or maybe there is something more to it. Okay. So, when this thing comes up, and on top of that, another thing comes up, that Canada was constantly in touch with US government about it, which means that the President Joe Biden also was aware of it. And on top of that, the G20, which happened in India, I did talk about it, that when you look at the whole achievement, it was very positive, no doubt about it. But at the same time, on the other hand, there was no press conference by anybody. I was having some conversation with some of my friends, and some of them, they were like, he always, the Prime Minister always gives the statement, this and that. Yes, he does give the statement, but he gives the statements about the politics and attacking the opposition. Let me say something here also to those people who just think or talk about it, that they are a group of bunch of different opinion people, this and that. What NDA stands for? National Democratic Alliance, which means BJP is not alone, there are other parties in the group. Yes, right now BJP on its own has the majority in the parliament, so they have the right to do whatever they want to do and things like that. But at the same time, any government does not have the right to commit any kind of crime on other countries' land. I will share another thing here, which I did talk about when during Obama administration it did happen that a drone strike took place on a wedding party, and a lot of people died in that from the wedding party, because in those parts of the world, they carry the arms like they do in here, United States. If you can have an AR-15 in the United States and go to shopping mall to shop, why can't they? But assumed they were threat and they were eliminated. So, what I'm trying to say here is, just because somebody appears that way doesn't mean that that person may be harmful. If those people who are still demanding the Khalistan, there is a reason for that. I just wonder how many times the government, the Indian government, including the current Prime Minister, Honorable Narendra Modi, I will still call honorable because he deserves that. It is to the chair which you are addressing, not the person as a person. So, the Honorable Prime Minister had 9 years, and the Sikhs has been in particular, and Punjabis in general, they have been asking for justice which has not been delivered to them even before independence, forget about after independence. Yeah, Punjab has been divided and further divided and further divided, but some of the the fundamentals of the constitution which were applicable to every other state in India, they were not applied in Punjab. And there is another interesting aspect happening right now in Punjab. People talk about the Christianity being spread in Punjab and this and that. I look further deep into it. The people in Punjab, those Punjabis who are born into Punjab, they assume that Punjabi is the language of illiterate, uneducated, unsophisticated people. So don't use it at home, either Hindi or English. Forget about Punjabi. Let those people in the villages who are farmers, and one of the Sikh scholar who calls himself scholar, he probably is a scholar because he did some research and he wrote some papers and maybe a couple of books too. He said, oh, ये भैंसों का दूध पीने वाले इनको क्या पता है कि क्या होता है क्या नहीं होता है, इनके दिमाग जो हैं वो मोटे हैं. Let me translate in English. That these people who drink the milk from the buffaloes, they have fat brains, they will not understand about the bills which are passed, and those are for the benefit of the farmers. Remember that? And also, I remember everything was done to undermine at that point that farmers movement there was a move to get it declared as a terrorist activity or any other name at that point. So, when you start putting all these pieces together, yeah, Hardeep Singh Nijjar, whatever he was doing, let him do it. How does it matter? If you are sitting in India and he is doing it in Canada, how does it matter to you? Yes, you already have the warrants out for him to get arrested and then and send him to India for whatever the crime was. I don't know what the crime was, but whatever it was. If you already have that and you are already in international court, then wait. So, as we go along, as the more information comes out on this thing, it is very important that I hear from you about the issues which I discuss here, because it affects our community. When I say our community, I am not talking about just the Sikh community, I am talking about the community at large, the diaspora, the Indian diaspora, which is living in the United States, which has made US and Canada as their motherland, that okay, this is the country where they have decided to live. And so, it's very interesting that when we look at the history, Mahatma Gandhi is known as a person who actually was or is being credited to the one who invented the non-violence way of satyagraha, the word which is given to it. Even though in 19th century, the Kuka Sikhs and their guru, at that time, he used the same thing. A Sikh, and he was the one also who actually refused to accept anything which was British. either made in Britain or otherwise where there was a government of United Kingdom's government, the UK government, the British government's involvement in any kind of supplies, and which was later on adopted by Mohandas Karamchand Gandhi slash Mahatma Gandhi as Quit India movement, and then boycott the product, and march to the what do we call, the Great March for the Salt in Gujarat. So, what I am trying to say here is, and this message actually is basically it is directed towards the Sikhs in particular, that those Sikhs who try to show their frustration, genuine or otherwise, just to get the green cards, being vociferous and threatening and everything. No. If we look at our history, the history of the gurus, they taught us starting from Guru Nanak Dev Ji that you should not, even Guru Gobind Singh Ji said that you should not be using the force. Force should never be an option, the first option. And I'm going to add one more thing here. It has become a fashion, and for us, the Sikhs, it has also, especially that the people who are educated, when Guru Gobind Singh Ji and other gurus, they are compared with Prithviraj Chauhan, Shivaji Maratha, Jhansi Ki Rani. I definitely have objection to that, because Prithviraj Chauhan, Shivaji Maratha, Jhansi Ki Rani, they were fighting for the rule which they were ruling. They were not fighting for the welfare of the people or freedom of the country. No, they were not. Look at the history. They were fighting to keep their kingdom. And none of the guru had any kingdom in their mind. They talked about the community, everybody, doesn't matter, irrespective of faith or anything. So, having said that, in today's situation between Canada and India, okay, there are trade mission which was postponed. There was a reason for that, and this was the reason that the Canadian government was investigating what's going on, and Justin Trudeau actually had to give a statement in the parliament. In contrast, the Honorable Prime Minister of India did not give any substantial statement in the parliament regarding what was happening in Manipur and other states. Because see, that's the difference when you live in a democratic country, which is actually a democratic country, or the country where any kind of dissension is immediately pressed down by the followers of whosoever it is. Because what happens actually is that if you don't have the freedom of speech, then you cannot talk about it, and that is one of the reasons that a lot of issues are not coming up in the press in India. But I'm pretty sure that sooner or later, a lot of these things are going to come out one step at a time, one thing at a time. They have to. You can keep the things covered for some time. And you know what? History is something which actually does not spare anybody down the road. Yeah, you may change the subjects in the short run, you may do the things in the short run, but ultimately when the starts coming out, then you see, that's exactly what happened when during World War II, when 6 million Jews were killed by Hitler at that time, by the Nazis. And it is same way that things will come out down the road, that what happened, how the things happened, and who was responsible. We may not be around at that time, but that music has to be faced historically. Same way like here, what happened on January 6 and January 6, 2021, before the current president, President Joe Biden, took the oath. History will judge the President Donald Trump. Yes, right now Republicans are saying, though, he was great president, but I'm going to talk about that after this coming up break. But right now, what I want to, wrap up my conversation about this today by saying that we as Sikhs, as Punjabis, we are still waiting for the justice. It doesn't matter which justice it is either the justice of what happened in 80s or what happened in 90s. It is the justice where, just look at something I'm going to talk about here, Kapurthala coach factory. It was just a mere 100 crore investment by the Indian government. Just to get that factory in Punjab, which is in Kapurthala right now, it took years of the Punjab government to fight for it, to have it established in Punjab. Why? Because the reason was, Punjab is close to the border, if the war starts, the first thing will be the target is going to be the coach factory, and blah, 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 blah. There are always excuses. But in the meantime, Faridabad was industrialized completely, no issues. There were other industries established in Gujarat, no issues. And also there is one thing, which I want to share here, which happened with me personally. I was traveling on LIRR, the Long Island Railroad. I got off at Hicksville train station. It was around 9:15 or so in the evening. And there was another gentleman who, got off from the train. And I'm talking about 2014, before the current Prime Minister Narendra Modi got elected. And there was already conversations and discussions on the election of in India, and at that time everybody knew that next Prime Minister is going to be the Gujarat Chief Minister, then Gujarat Chief Minister Narendra Modi. Okay. Now the question comes in, this gentleman, he started talking to me about, what I think about Narendra Modi as a Prime Minister, and he asked me some more questions, and I told him, I said, I told him in a real, just simple term, I said, listen, I said, I definitely have one objection to it. He said, what? I said, in Gujarat, the Sikh farmers, they are being uprooted by the government, by the Gujarat government, which was at that time being headed by the then Chief Minister Narendra Modi. And that land is they are being evicted, and that land is being taken over by the government. They are not getting properly compensated either, and there is not much conversation going out, happening on that. And he said to me, immediately he said, well, wo zameen to hamari hai. That was exact his answer to me, which means basically he was telling me that that property belongs to Gujaratis. And I said to him, I said, well, then what are you doing in the United States? Go there. Go to Gujarat. And after that end of conversation, after that we met 3-4 times, he will just avoid me. So what I'm trying to say is, logic is important. The facts are important. the truth is important. Ultimately, the facts come out. In a way, it is an exploding news. We will see how the things happen and where the chips fall ultimately, and who gets what. But there is one thing for sure, that Canada has already deported one of the Indian diplomat, and India kicked out one of the Canadian diplomat, which always happens in the countries. For the people, for the general public, they may not, look at it as a big deal, but yes, when it happens between India and Canada, it is a big deal, because both the countries are also part of the Commonwealth countries, which is basically, the British government. Actually, when British was wrapping up their world empire, they had all these countries, become part of the Commonwealth. And that was also one of the things when the Britishers left India. They were like, okay, Pakistan, which was not even in existence at that time, have already agreed to be the part of Commonwealth once it becomes Pakistan, and India also agreed. Coming to the situation right here in the United States now, let us talk the things which are happening here. First of all, there was a swap of the prisoners between United States and Iran. U.S. actually released some money, some frozen assets of Iran, and Iran in return released some of the prisoners. So we can say basically, it's like blackmailing. We have your prisoners, you give us the money, ransom, and we will release them. But there is more to it than just that. And I'm pretty sure that we will have more information on that. But right now, as we're talking, those people, they actually landed in Qatar, from where they will be actually, they joined their families, and they will be coming here to United States, and probably will have a photo op with the President of United States, also with the current President Joe Biden. And also, we should not forget that we have UN session started as of yesterday. It's 2 weeks session, and it's a annual ritual, if I may say, because United Nations is a body without any teeth. It does have some permanent members for the security. Some 5 countries have the veto power, which means that if a resolution is brought against any particular country, and one of those powers which has the veto power, they veto it, that resolution does not move forward, and it never gets accepted. Okay. And those people who sometimes wonder about the relations between Russia and India and America and India, they need to understand that there was a time when America was with Pakistan and trying to do everything to get the issues about Jammu and Kashmir in United Nations, and Russia used to veto it. And those people who are born after 1971 war, who grew up after that, which is the majority of the Indians right now, they have no idea that how that Shimla Samjhauta in 1972 was signed, what happened before that, because next week I'm going to talk about that 1965 1971 war, which happened at that time, and Zulfikar Ali Bhutto, who was the Prime Minister of India, of Pakistan, I'm sorry, and the Indira Gandhi was the Prime Minister of India at that time. An agreement was signed in 1972 at Shimla, and the architect of that agreement was Honorable Foreign Minister of the time, Swaran Singh. We do the people who travel in Punjab and they go through Jalandhar, they on PAP Chowk, they do see his statue. I'm saying it here for the people who don't know about him. They need to understand and they need to know these things. And also there is another comment which I will make here, that he was also a person who actually had an agreement between Bhindranwale and the government of India before Golden Temple was attacked. But at that time, the Indian government, the Prime Minister was Indira Gandhi, and she actually was advised by L.K. Advani and Atal Bihari Vajpayee and George Fernandez, which were all part of BJP, to not to sign the agreement, but to attack Golden Temple and subvert the whole community, the Sikh community. And that fire is still going on, and we already have this thing happening here, which is actually not helping the issue at all. So coming back to the happening here in United Nations, so UN actually will have few things to say. We will see the Ukrainian President Zelensky is in the United Nations. He gave a lecture. Joe Biden, the US President, he also spoke over here. And both of them, they talked about the democratic setup, what democracy is and what it should be. And excuse me, it's very important that that democracy is preserved and expanded. Everything is not great about democracy. I always say this thing, that minority actually ends up ruling, but still it is better than the dictatorship. When I say minority, what I am saying is, let us say there are 100 registered voters, only 70 came out to vote, and the person who gets 37% out of those 70% makes the government. So actually that 37% is not out of the 100, because 30% is already out. They did not even vote for either one of the party. So, but that is democratic. Those are the things, and whether we like or we don't like, the winner takes it all, and that is what happens in democratic setups. But at the same time, at least after a couple of years, you get the chance to vote. Even sometime, like in India, it always happens, the votes are bought by giving you the liquor, giving you the drugs, giving you the money, you name it, and it is done. And it's a fact. People know that. Even though in the media it is not, here and there they will say, oh, they caught this much money here, there, but yeah, okay. So whether it is, democracy is not perfect, it is flawed, but it is still better than a dictatorship, because at least you have the freedom of speech, unless you have a government who does not believe in freedom of speech but gets elected democratically. We definitely have the elections coming up in India, and current session of Indian Parliament, which was called in as an emergency session, and a bill was introduced for 33% for the women from any party to put up the women as one of the 33% should be the women candidates. That is a nice way of getting the votes. I believe that yes, there should be a reservation, but a reservation should be in a way where it does not look like that it is being done just to grab the power. Before I wrap up today's program about whatever happened with the Hardeep signature and what's going on, there are two more things which I would like to share. One is, in US Congress, the current speaker, Kevin McCarthy, could not get his Republican caucus to pass the defense bill, which is actually, they always talk about we are the people for the defense and the Democrats are not, And also at the same time, there is another thing which I would like to say, and that is they are talking about, out of hand expenses and deficit and this and that, whereas when you look at numerically the deficit, the biggest contribution to increase the deficit of United States was done by the presidents who were Republicans, by the Congress and the Senate, which was controlled by majority Republicans. Close to 25% of the current outstanding loan of the U.S. government was actually added by the former president or the current president or the incoming president, like Donald Trump wants to be seen and called by him. But they will not talk about it because people buy it. So the reason I am talking here about all this is because I want you to remember that this is how things happen, and next time when somebody talks about it, you should be in a position to ask a question about it, that why they are saying what they are saying. And also 30th of September is the day before that the U.S. Congress has to have a budget. Now, let us look at, what happened when, they were looking to increase the amount which the U.S. government can borrow. We had that conversation only a couple of months ago, where Kevin McCarthy and the Senate and the president, all three of them, they got together, and President Biden was able to get a chit to have that spending without any issues till the end of next year, 2024, because the presidential elections are going to be in November of 2024. Even though I did not talk much about the presidential election, because this issue between India and Canada, it is very important, needs to be discussed further. I will talk about it more before I close today's program. So government shutdown is a possibility which we should not ignore. Now, let me go back to where I opened up the program today. I want to give you my thoughts on that. Okay. This is actually a big deal to begin with, number one. Number two, the government, when always, doesn't matter which government over here I am talking about, okay? They always talk about it, that, oh, we had nothing to do with it. Remember Khashoggi from Saudi Arabia, who was literally in in Saudi Arabian consulate in Turkey. He was invited, he went in, they cut him into pieces, and they disposed of his body. They were denying, and then, the Saudi Arabians, they, picked up some of the low ranked officers and one or two high ranking officers. Oh, they did it, they had no instructions, and they did it on their own, and they lost it. No, nobody does that kind of act without any instructions from the higher ups. I don't know whether it was a plan which was planned and executed by RAW, or it was planned and executed by some other rogue agency or rogue people within an agency. I don't know yet, but it definitely is something which needs to be taken care of properly. And if the Indian government is serious that they have no hand in doing so, then the best thing will be to look at what the Canadian government has to offer, what kind of intelligence they have, look at it, and then provide them what they are looking for. Answer it properly instead of just denying, oh, we did not do it. And the other interesting thing is, yes, at the beginning of the show, I mentioned, that the Prime Minister did try to reach out the other governments, the US government, the UK government, and I'm pretty sure some other governments also in the world. But nobody actually wanted to come out of Mali. Every country has their own interests. Don't forget that. Okay. US, the current government has the interest in wooing India to its hemisphere of influence because they want to counter China. Number one. Number two, they want the business. Because India is a developing country right now, the business is going to expand and investment is going to expand. So, they are looking for that. Same thing with the UK government, same thing with the Japanese government. So, that is where diplomacy comes into play, that what to say and what not to say. And if they want to say something, how to say it. Just saying that Justin Trudeau wanted to appease the separatists, I beg to differ on that. The reason is because when you go to Canada, you talk to the people. Even one of the Indian source, he mentioned that a very small group of people have a much wider influence on the community. It's not that they have influence on the community, it is that they are more vocal and the media covers more vocal. There is an old saying that creaking wheel gets the oil, which means basically what? The more noise you will make, the more coverage you will get. And especially with the social media, that is happening. And there are people actually active within US and Canada who work a lot of things on behalf of their mother countries, not just India. There are people in US from, you name the country and they have the people here. And I'm pretty sure that each country has their own interest and they are watching each other. And yes, if the people don't remember, let me tell you that Snowden, when he released that WikiLeaks, he was actually talking about how each government, spies on each other government, even though they are close friends. US spying on Canada, US spying on UK, US spying on Germany and vice versa, US spying on France. Yeah, of course, they are spying on the people, on the countries who are not into their hemisphere, but they are spying on them anyway. Even their friends are being spied on. So, that is what diplomacy is. So, by saying this, I will conclude today's show that it will be advisable to have this conversation on both sides where a proper resolution is found and a conclusion is there that what happened, how it happened, who was behind it and why. And then let the chips fall where they fall instead of just putting your, like an ostrich, putting your head in the sand and not accepting it. So, it's a very painful for everybody, including us, especially for the Sikh community, but it needs to be resolved. Having said that, till next time, good night and good luck.